Hello, this is Kenya, and welcome to Curious Herbalism. Now, as you can tell this evening, my laptop has decided that no, we're not going to do it today. So you see me vertically, which is kind of in tune with what we've got to do today because we're going to talk about a vertical plant. Yarrow, you've seen this plant. It has the lacy wings. See it? I'm giving you the bombastic single eye because I'm feeling good and I think you'll like this herb as well. So I'm going to go back so you can see me very well. Yarrow grows in almost everybody's garden somewhere along in the Midwest. This plant is a lifesaver for so many reasons, and I wanted to tell you about it. Ready to get started? Here we go. With yarrow, one of the first things you'll see is that it's going to have these lacy leaves. This will help you identify it, okay? And it's going to have a strange little, excuse me, spicy, astringent smell. It kind of reminds me a little bit of how cilantro tastes to me. Yes, I'm one of those people. It tastes like soap to me, but I still cook with it. So, go figure, right? Now, with yarrow, what we need to keep in mind is that it's a beautiful plant. Many times in your garden, it's usually about 5 or 6 inches high. It doesn't want to be 5 or 6 inches high. You've probably trained it to be 5 or 6 inches high. Yarrow itself will get to be about 3 feet high if you let it. I've even seen it a little bit taller. I've definitely seen it shorter. Yarrow also has an umbrella like cluster of flowers. They're really pretty. Now, most of the time, you're going to see them in white. You will also see them in yellow and sometimes in what they call purple. It's not purple, it's red, y'all. It's red. Don't let them fool you. Don't let them fool you. Okay, all right. We're not gonna say any more of that because we're not gonna pay any rights to anybody's estate. So that's the closest you're gonna get to any singing from me. Huh. All right, all right. Now here's the thing. Oh, I just sounded like my aunt Marjorie. Okay, she's from Trinidad. Okay, um, with yarrow, it has a wonderful amount of healthy benefits and spiritual and magical benefits. So let's start about I want to say from the top to the bottom. The top thing that you want to remember about yarrow is that if you get hurt, if you have a cut, if you have a scratch, if you have anything that's bleeding and you don't have a band aid, this is the plant for you. You're going to crush it up. Now, if you've already prepared it, if you've gathered it and made it into a powder, you're ahead of the game because now all you have to do is sprinkle that yarrow powder all over the wound. But let's just say you haven't. If you see this herb in the wild, you can put it on that wound to stop bleeding. Now, some of you are old enough to remember styptic pens and styptic pencils. We're not going to talk about how old I am today. That's beside. But if you remember the styptic pen and the styptic pencil, you know that when you would cut yourself shaving, wherever that was, or something else happened, maybe you got pricked by a bramble looking for blackberries or something, or just generally got cut, even if it's a deep cut, you often would find if you knew about yarrow, you could pack that wound with the yarrow, just kind of crush it up, bruise the leaves, put it in there, and you would be able to stop that bleeding until you could get medical attention. Now, let's remember, I am not a certified herbalist. I am not a certified naturopath. I am not a doctor of osteopathy, nor am I a medical doctor. I'm telling you folk remedies. So don't come after me with the ADA talking about Kenya told you to do this or that. Now, the next thing you want to remember is not only does yarrow do that, yarrow is supposed to be allegedly good for feminine issues when you have a cold womb. That means it helps get the blood circulating and flowing in the pelvic area. For more information on that, you need to contact a midwife. I am not a midwife. You could contact the doula, but that's a different training. And why do we want to know about that? Because it's important. Because sometimes, especially as we go through our cycles of life, as well as our monthly cycles. We need to warm the pelvis. We need to warm the womb. It's not just for us, of course, it's for everybody because sometimes men need a little help too, but that's not my wheelhouse. So I'm going to mind my business and stay in my lane a little bit because I'm more concerned with you knowing the generalities. I'm not going to give you all the information that you need in order to use yarrow in a medical fashion. Do you know why? Because you're not going to sue me, but you can look it up. Another thing that yarrow is well known for is to be known as birth stitching or midwife stitching. Remember, we talked about the styptic quality? Remember, we talked about how it stops bleeding? That's right. Older midwives in different areas of the world used yarrow in order to stop the bleeding or help stop bleeding after childbirth, especially during hemorrhaging. Now, let's be clear. That does not mean that you are going to have your home birth and you're going to just pack anything with yarrow if things may go astray. You will go to the hospital or the doctor. That's what you're going to do. But if you're in a pinch and you need some help desperately, it's good to know about yarrow. See what I did there? That was a rhyme. Another good thing about yarrow, spiritually and magically, is that it's good for courage. It's good to stop that fear from draining out of you. It's also good to help regulate your emotions. If you are fearful, if you are a bleeding heart, yarrow is the plant for you. If you really notice yarrow, it looks rather delicate. It doesn't seem like it's very strong from appearances. But if you take a closer look, you'll see that it bursts and it climbs and it forces its way through any other plants that may seem in its way. It climbs up above, unless it's in a thick group, in which case it's like an army of yarrow. And be careful in the garden, it will seed heavily. When they say that it's easy to propagate or it's aggressive, believe it, because that means in plant talk, some people might see it as a weed. It's not going anywhere. So you may as well get used to having it if you plant it. However, and this is something that's important, you have the ability to control that. That's completely under your control. And yarrow is very much about control. Controls bleeding, controls emotions, controls misplaced sympathy, controls yourself against self deprecating or self hating talk. You can use yarrow in this fashion. But what else is yarrow good for? Well, you would think with the legend behind it. Oh, I didn't tell you the legend, did I? Have you ever heard of a little man called Achilles? Okay, we're not talking about Hollywood movies right now. We are talking about ancient myths. Achilles, well, that's part of this Latin name for this plant. I'll let you look that up. Why? Because you can use it to staunch blood. Today's word of the day is staunch. Okay, so this is important. Another thing that yarrow is very good for is protection. In my deck of okay, Minerdia de Sosore, Lord, I done butchered that name, but it's true. In my deck of cards, my spell cards, I do have a spell in there for protection. But I didn't originate the spell at all. Well, the spell I did, but the properties of protection were already there. Did you know that the people who were here first, the indigenous, and who are still here in certain societies, it's not my place to tell you those, but they would mix it with sand. They pound the yarrow into sand and use it as protection around their home. You could make your own protective rites and protective spells. I'm not the boss of you. You are the boss of you. Remember, you're in control. And yarrow is very much about control. Another thing spiritually with yarrow is that you don't just have to use it about blood. Remember, you can make salves and other things. You can add a little bit of the bitterness of yarrow to a tonic. Now, before we start saying, I told you to run off and make yarrow mead, that's not what I said. Yarrow is a little bit edible. Hold on, don't you start herbalists. I know for a fact that I have had yarrow in a preparation with one of my friends who practices a certain kind of medicine. But that does not mean I'm going to spread that information to you, as I do not want to be sued. But look it up. There's ways you can ingest yarrow, but it's only in minuscule amounts. It's kind of not very appetizing. Sorry, I have to be my way of sweat bee. Another thing you can do with yarrow is you can mix it with other plants for very specific goals. Have you ever thought about mixing your own smoke cleansing wand? You can do it with yarrow. You know what else you can do? You can make a wreath. People frown on wreaths. They think that they're not for anything except for holiday decoration. They look at that circle and they're like, oh, it's so pretty. I'm outside. You can hear somebody out here doing yard work if you're really listening. We're not going to pay attention. But they look at that circle and they think to themselves, oh, this is just a decoration. Hmm. Yeah, it's a decoration, all right. It's a decoration and it's a declaration. It is a declaration of protection, of defense, and sometimes war, depending on what you're into. But of course, no one listening to this podcast would be in a magical war. But anyway, what I'm saying is, and I'm saying podcast because primarily this is vocal, although there are visuals. Look at me, I'm so pretty. I'm so pretty. But there's something else you can do with that wreath. You can use that wreath in order to make a circle of protection that you will then enchant. You should know how to enchant if you're watching this. If not, there are many people around who can teach you. And you can use that to protect the boundaries of your home. Who said you only had to have one wreath? You can have a wreath on every door. And it doesn't have to be large enough to see. A wreath does not have to be 5 foot across, completely covered in Christmas balls, be decked with, Yule kind of decorations or anything else. No, 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 no. You can make a yarrow wreath mixed with other protective things, and it could be no bigger than the palm of your hand, and it will work just fine, especially with your enchantment. You can make yourself a ward with it. You can put it all around. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you make a wreath of just yarrow, you're going to have to gather a lot because this is not a very thick stem. But what you can do is mix it with other herbs or other plant helpers and plant people to give yourself the overall effect you are looking for. Personally, I recommend rosemary. Rosemary, yarrow, and if you have an olive tree, put a little bit of that in there, trying to make it sweet and kind. And then you could put in, oh, I don't know, some bell pepper or some even, because they're protected, by the way, or even cayenne pepper leaves. Put a little stank on it. I'm just saying. But yarrow is a wonderful plant, and I strongly recommend you get to know it. If you can't find yarrow and you didn't grow it, you could find it at a new moon 21. Excuse me, a new moon 22. I'm having a moment. I wish I was 21 again, but alas, I'm not 21 or 22. But you can find yarrow at a new moon 22 in New Baltimore, Michigan. You can find me there too. I'll be there to teach you all about it. Well, mostly. After all, I have to be careful on what I say in public. I can only say so much on this video show right now. I can't give all my secrets away. Well, maybe a few. Come on out and see me or message me, or follow the other fine shows here on this network, and you'll be able to enjoy more knowledge and more fun here on these stations. Really, it's one station and me and my on Facebook, but you know what I mean. Till next time.